that social media should not exactly be our source of news, I do want to begin by sharing a Facebook post that I saw from my cousin this week in Israel. To put it in context, my cousin has 4 children. One of them has been serving since October 7th in the intelligence units on the border of Gaza, juggling also at the same time his studies for the bar exam. Her husband has been serving in the Miluim, the reserves up north, coming back and forth at home, trying to also juggle a day job. Her daughter gave birth just days after October 7th, and her son-in-law, also serving in the border of Gaza, is trying to juggle being both a soldier in the IDF and a first-time dad. She tells me when she looks out her door, her neighbor to the left, their nephew, continually held hostage in Gaza, one of the names that you see on our seats in front of us. And so this is what she wrote on Facebook just a couple of days before Purim. She said, "When the war began, I decided it was better to ask and be asked, how are you managing? Since nobody knew how to answer the question, how are you?" She continues. She said, "The next round of holidays are coming. Look out for the families with members still and or again serving in the army. The families who've lost a loved one, people who have loved ones still being held hostage, those whose lives have been impacted by injury or battle, or people who have not been able to get back to their normal lives. Whether it's a result of being displaced, unable to return home in the north and the south, unemployment following lengthy stints in the IDF, or those who will always be affected by PTSD. She finishes, for some people, life has gone back to normal, as much as normal is these days. But don't forget about the lives who have not. So she says, take a moment and ask, how are you managing? That can make a difference. And then after this whole text, she texts me one thing at the end. She says, oh, by the way, check out this YouTube. It's of your cousin Yuval, her son, my cousin. It's his pre-Purim shtick. I hope you enjoy. Here it is, in a war of our survival, for our people. But tonight we're going to stop. We're going to put on a costume. We're going to eat some hamantashen. We're going to wave a grogger. And we're going to celebrate. For the last 2 months, because it's a leap year, as you know, it's Adar 2. We've had an opportunity for 4 more weeks to say, Misha nichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. Whoever enters into the month of Adar, you should be merry. You should be happy. And even though we had an extra month to prepare, usually we increase the joy. This year I've taken it a little differently. Perhaps we're almost hesitant to get to this moment tonight of Purim. There's a rabbinic listserv on Facebook. It's a private group, so probably many of you are not in that one. But rabbi after rabbi is asking, what is your Purim celebration going to look like tonight? And I know many of us have been struggling with that same question over these last 5.5 months. Let's go back to that day for just a moment, as we basically do every week. Remember October 7th? It was Simchat Torah. We had to make a very quick decision. What would we do here? Let's cancel the celebration. How could we take out the Torah from the ark? And you all remember what we did. We not only took them out of the ark, and we didn't keep them in this building, but we celebrated with those Torahs down the streets and in this neighborhood. Because we know our tradition in some way or another commands us, doesn't recommend, but commands us to be joyous. Just a couple of examples. Every single morning, Psalm 100, Mizmor Latoda, God, thank you, give thanks. Ivdu et Adonai b'simcha, that we should worship God with joy. The book of Devarim in the Deuteronomy, V'samachta bechagecha, you should be happy on your festivals, but not by yourself. Who should you be happy with? All those who work with you, who work for you, your family, your community. And my favorite, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, he says, mitzvah gedola liot b'simcha tamid. It is a mitzvah, the greatest mitzvah, to be happy always. But tonight, 100 or more hostages being held, when every one of us knows somebody who's either lost their life in the IDF, been injured, a survivor of the Nova Festival. Read the Jewish Journal article about how those survivors came to Camp Ramah just a couple of weeks ago. Somebody who was in captivity. We should have a dance party tonight. And I'm going to answer you with 2 words in one. The first is the first word of our parsha this morning, Vayikra. And the second is a word that is found in the word Vayikra, which we will say twice tonight, Vikar. If you have a Chumash in front of you, you can open it up to page 585. But Vayikra el Moshe, when God calls to Moses, if you look, the last letter of the word Vayikra is Aleph, and it's tiny. And that's not because they didn't have enough space on the page in the Chumash. Every single Torah around the world has that small Aleph. The classic interpretation is that deep meanings are found within silence, because we know Aleph makes no sound, and you can barely see it. But we find the biggest actions happen in the small interactions. But for tonight on Purim, we add a different interpretation, an answer of how we can and we must find just a bit of joy in our celebration of Purim, an unprecedented Purim in our lifetime. Towards the end of the Megillah, you might know this not from chapter 8, but rather from the Havdalah service that the rabbis put this line in, La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason Vikar. That the Jews one day should have light, should have joy, should have happiness, and should have honor, Vikar. So let's go back to that Aleph for a moment. You see the word Vayikra that ends with Aleph. If you take away that Aleph, you get the word Vikar, honor. The Torah is telling us that one day, even though today we cannot see it, and even though today we cannot hear it, the honor will come to us. And that honor only comes with that obligation to find moments of joy. And so this morning we have to define and we have to search for the type of joy that we are looking for over these next 24 hours of Purim. And there's much written about happiness in the Talmud. In fact, in the part of the Talmud of Pesach, the rabbis ask, what is happiness? And this is not my definition, this is the rabbis, so argue with them, not me. The rabbis say, they separate the genders on this one, but they say for men, happiness is wine. But another rabbi says, yes, that's true, for men it's wine, but for women it's clothing. And not only do they say that, they say in Babylonia it's different than Israel because there's different styles, so make sure you're buying the right thing for the right person to make sure that they're really happy. But Rabbi Mark Angel, Sephardic rabbi in New York, of Congregation Sherith Israel, he writes, yes, that is physical happiness, but that's not what we're looking for tonight. What we're looking for tonight on the holiday of Purim is spiritual joy. He says the difference between the two is that physical joy is me-oriented, it would make me happy. But spiritual joy is other-oriented. It's what allows me to make somebody else happy. For that, I can't do it alone. But we need each other. And that's exactly what Yasmin told us this morning when she stood up here. Remembering the Purim story, we hear the word nafochu. Our life is turned upside down. Because on the 14th of Adar, we were supposed to be gone and erased from the map of this earth. Nafochu. We were not. We were saved. And we're here today. And in that moment of destiny, we completely changed what we thought about happiness. Because what we thought would make us happy before the 14th of Adar in the time of Shushan was a very different answer than what the Jews thought after they were saved. They had a different feeling of what it meant to have their life back. This is what Purim joy is about. It's about the ability and the knowledge to change our perspective of our life. How do we find joy on Purim? Look at two of the mitzvot that were commanded for tomorrow. Number one, which most of us take part of, mishloach manot. You give your neighbor a hamantashin, a little treat. You don't make it for yourself. You give it away. And matanot le'evyonim. You donate something to the poor. You make that person's life a little better tomorrow than it is today. In other words, the command is not to feel joyful, but the command is to be joyful. And that means coming together and celebrating. For when we do, we can experience the spiritual joy that will lead one day to vihikar, honor for all of us as a people. And so tonight I can even hear the raindrops outside these walls. Don't let the weather scare you. If you were thinking about maybe just tuning in to a Megillah around the world, come in person. Learn and hear the traditional Megillah reading. Join the hundreds of young families that will be here dressed in Spider-Man and any other costume that they imagine. Show our next generation that we must be joyous. Bring a grogger or we'll have a box of macaroni for you. But most importantly, bring yourself. So the next time our brothers and sisters ask, not how are you, but how are you managing, they will understand that they are not alone. As I told my cousin before Shabbat what I was going to tell you all this morning, she wrote me a postscript. She says, tell your friends and community this. She says, the biggest key in defeating Amalek are the words in the Megillah. We shall defeat them with simcha, with joy. We should defeat them with sason, with gladness. And ultimately, we shall be returned to v'ikar, in honor. And with that honor, we will prevail. Shabbat shalom and Chag Sameach.